Hey everybody, this is Dr. Angel with the Alternative Health Food Store, and today I'm bringing you some information on adrenals, those organs that are on top of our kidneys that basically determine whether we have energy or not. I want to have a disclaimer that these statements in this course have not been evaluated by the FDA, and the information is just intended to educate, not to diagnose, treat, or cure or prevent any disease. So the adrenals are something that I hear about every day. People are constantly having trouble with their energy issues. So I'm going to do this video. You can also go to my website, holisticangel.com. It's WHOLISTICANGEL.com. And you can get a PowerPoint PDF of this presentation. You can also get an adrenal symptom checklist and some recipes. So when you go to the site, just scroll down and you'll see it'll say adrenal issues, and it'll start talking about all those things that you can download. So when you think about your car, you don't run your car for 18 hours a day. You don't put cheap gas in it, and you don't rarely change the oil. You do all those things. But with our body, we tend to do that all the time. We're constantly on the go without getting enough sleep. We get food out of a window. We rarely give ourselves maintenance. And all of this leads to adrenal fatigue. And yet, adrenal fatigue is one of the most common and misunderstood and misdiagnosed recognized conditions in America. And it's one of the reasons most people come to see me. So what do the adrenals exactly do? Well, they're located on top of the kidneys, and they're part of the endocrine system. And optimal functioning of the adrenal is important to the whole body. So they do things like produce aldosterone, cortisol, DHEA, pregnenolone, all kinds of hormones like that. But the hormone that you may have heard of that it produces is cortisol. Now, cortisol is important to immune health because it reduces inflammation and prevents blood glucose levels from dropping too low. So a lot of people who have hypoglycemia or diabetes actually have adrenal issues too. Now, when cortisol is too high for too long, it can increase the amount of fat you have in your belly, which is called visceral fat. And that's why most people have heard about cortisol, because of that fat layer we talk about. So there are dangers of adrenal dysfunction that can definitely cause a lot of problems. We mentioned the weight gain. It can cause anxiety, autoimmune issues, chronic fatigue, depression, dizziness, fibromyalgia, heart palpitations, mood swings, and any number of things. Researchers have found that elevated levels of cortisol, which is one of the main hormones produced during stress, has a negative effect on memory as well. So cortisol belongs to a family of hormones that, among other things, can interfere with energy supply to brain cells involved in memory. Stress hormones appear to rapidly exacerbate the formation of brain lesions, which can lead to Alzheimer's. So we have got to fix this adrenal dysfunction. You do not want it to lead to issues with memory. In the short term, cortisol is helpful for survival. We see something that scares us, we get adrenaline and we run off. However, long-term elevation can have detrimental effects. Normally, cortisol levels peak in the morning and then decrease as the day goes on. In depressed people, the cortisol peaks early in the morning and does not level off. And so there's a problem they found where chronically elevated cortisol can actually cause depression because it affects the serotonin receptor systems. So researchers have found that once cortisol returns to normal levels, depression can actually get better as well. And it's the same with anxiety. We see this as well whenever there's high cortisol levels. So what depletes our adrenals? Well, stress is the number one factor in adrenal fatigue. Another factor is steroids. After steroids have been taken for several days, it decreases the ability of the adrenals to produce cortisol. And the British Journal of Pharmacology actually says that statin drugs decrease the sensitivity of adrenal glands as well. Another issue is smoking. It increases the body's inflammatory response and contains toxins, which we're going to talk about later, both of which are acute stressors for the adrenals. Now, finally, menopause. Menopause is an issue. It's not it's something that happens that can cause issues with the adrenals. During menopause, women experience a decreased production of sex hormones by the ovaries and the adrenal glands. When the adrenal glands are constantly having to adapt to that stress, progesterone is converted to the adrenal hormone cortisol rather than converting to estrogen and testosterone, which it's supposed to do. So whether or not menopause is going to be symptomatic or symptom-free depends on the health of the adrenal organs. So lots of women who have adrenal fatigue are in menopause, and sometimes that's one of the best things we can do to help them with any symptoms. Now, there are stages of adrenal fatigue. Stage 1, most of the time, nobody seems to notice. Stage 2, you may have a weakened immune system, bone loss, blood pressure issues, blood sugar issues, difficulty sleeping, and metabolic syndrome. Now, metabolic syndrome is what doctors have labeled when a patient has high blood sugar, high blood pressure, obesity, and high triglycerides all at the same time. Stage 3 of adrenal fatigue is when you have those first two levels, plus increased tiredness and dizziness. This is when I usually start seeing people. When the cortisol is too high for too long, and it causes that visceral fatness, stage 3 as well. Stage 4, all of the above gets worse, plus we lose libido, increased confusion, problems thinking, salt cravings. Finally, there's level 5, exhaustion, and that's when everything's happening. You get less restless leg, it can be interstitial cystitis, like everything you can think of. You just cannot get out of bed. That's when the level 5 is. So, how do you find out if you have adrenal issues? Well, if you go to my website, theholisticangel.com, like we discussed earlier, there is a self assessment you can do with the most common symptoms of adrenal fatigue. You can also do saliva testing. It's a more accurate measure than blood testing, and it provides levels of where your cortisol. You have to give them saliva throughout the day and determine how your cortisol levels are. And then finally, you can visit an iridologist. I'm an iridologist. I see adrenal fatigue in people all the time. Iridology works there's 28,000 nerve endings that come into the eye. So anything that hits a nerve, I can see. So when the adrenal glands hit a nerve, we can tell if the adrenals are optimal or not. And you can read more about that at my website as well. When you go to the website, just look for the natural health assessments, and it'll just explain to you how we see all that. And actually, in the book Adrenal Fatigue for Dummies, they recommend seeing an iridologist to determine adrenal issues because so many medical doctors just don't really recognize it. And that leads us to one of the biggest hurdles concerning the diagnosis and treatment of adrenal fatigue is finding a doctor who's willing to work with you. So there are medical doctors who do believe in adrenal fatigue. You just have to kind of find one and work with them or see a natural health practitioner. Now, I do want to mention two different issues. There's something called Cushing's disease and Addison's disease. And both of these are autoimmune issues. Cushing's is a syndrome in which the body produces an excess amount of cortisol and is shown by symptoms such as a swelling face, swelling at the back of the neck, lower extremity swelling. And then Addison's is the autoimmune adrenal fatigue. Some symptoms include hyperpigmentation in the hands, decreased hair growth. Both of these are autoimmune, as I said, and they need to have a medical doctor to deal with them. So we highly recommend if you have Cushing's or Addison's, you see a medical doctor. As a side note, Addison's disease is what we believe has President Kennedy had that caused him to have such fatigue issues. And recently, a medical forensic doctor looked at his medical records and discovered that it was probably all the cortisone, the steroids that he was giving as a youngster because he had another autoimmune disease that ended up hurting his adrenals and causing Addison's disease. So, what can you do to get these adrenals back up? Well, a big thing is diet changes. They're crucial for long-term restoration of the adrenals. Processed foods can increase inflammation and disrupt blood sugar levels. This inflammation causes the body to make more cortisol to reduce the inflammation and control the blood sugar levels in the same way as when the body was making cortisol when it senses fright. So artificial and processed food are not food, so we don't want to eat them. So we've gone from a way in our diet where originally we ate mainly wild game, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, things we could pick up easily. We didn't farm too much. And then we started farming a little bit. We got a few cows. So we got a little bit of dairy in our diet. We got some grains in our diet. And then we went to factory raised animals and dairy. So suddenly our animals aren't out wandering around eating what they should be eating. We get processed grains. We started eating more canned vegetables and more canned fruit. And now we're at the point where we're eating factory raised animals and dairy, high fructose corn syrup, and processed grains. And our body just was not meant to eat those things. So it causes what we call a phytonutrient gap. And the phytonutrient gap is the term used to describe the difference between the nutrients you need for optimal health and the nutrients you are actually getting. And this phytonutrient gap is caused for three different reasons. We don't choose fresh fruits and vegetables enough, and we eat too many processed foods. The fruits and vegetables we do choose are not nutrient rich like they used to be. The World Health Organization issued a report saying that 75% of Americans are magnesium deficient because we are not getting enough magnesium in our fresh foods anymore because of over farming. And even if you are eating mainly fresh fruits and vegetables, gut imbalances could be causing you not to absorb the nutrients you're eating. So all of things work together to get the phytonutrient gap. Some common deficiencies that we have in our diet are omega-3 deficiencies, which causes dry eye, eczema, depression, dry skin. Omega-3s are found a lot in fatty fishes. Magnesium, again, we mentioned that earlier, it can cause muscle cramps, twitching, constipation, restless leg syndrome, sleep disturbances. And one of the things about magnesium is that if you are constipated, when you take magnesium, you know that you're getting enough when you get diarrhea. So it's one of those things that really kind of gives you a heads up about. B12 deficiencies can cause fatigue, muscle weakness, poor memory, and soreness of the mouth and tongue. All three of these deficiencies are coming from our poor phytonutrient gap. Another problem we see with our diet is that we drink a lot of coffee and energy drinks. Caffeine stimulates neuron activity in the brain. Whenever you ingest it, neurons send messages to your pituitary gland, which is part of the endocrine system, like your adrenals, which in turn alerts your adrenals to pump out adrenaline and cortisol. Again, we don't want that. So you're saying, oh no, she tells me not to have caffeine. What should I do? Well, try a 2-week break from caffeine and afterwards make it a conscious choice as opposed to a habit. Switch to another form of caffeine, maybe go from coffee to tea. And then maybe from tea, you can do a half and half water with tea. Um, tea is lower in caffeine, so it won't stimulate the heart as much. Or, if at all possible, limit caffeine to before 9 a.m. and drink unsweetened tea the rest of the day. So don't drink your sugar. This is another thing we really need to look at. There's nothing redeeming about liquid sugar. When you consume foods high in sugar, it causes blood sugar to rapidly rise, then rapidly fall. Then in turn, that tells the adrenals to put out more cortisol, again, leading to more fat, energy issues, etc. So choosing foods should be looked at on the glycemic index. The lower on the index, the better. And you can find the glycemic index by Googling. Now, sugar is not an adrenal friendly food. I'm going to say that all over again. I always say sugar is the devil. Artificial sweeteners aren't much better, though. A recent study found that regular use of artificial sweeteners like Equal and NutraSweet and Splenda is correlated with Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease. Past studies have found a harmful impact on our gut biome and blood sugar metabolism. So we need to be really careful of these artificial sweeteners. Now, there are some sugar alternatives which are lower on the glycemic index that don't have these problems, things like xylitol and stevia. So you might want to check those out as well. So what do you need to do? Well, keep your food simple. Plan ahead, plan your meals weekly in advance, make a list of groceries and only go to the store once a week so you're not tempted to buy other things. Frozen fruits and vegetables are okay if they have no added ingredients. That makes life a lot easier. And if you go out to restaurants a lot, research them beforehand and find the least objectable options, kind of figure out and maybe eat the same thing, have like 3 different options when you go to a restaurant, and those are the things you choose from. So I think breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It establishes your insulin levels throughout the day, helps you function more efficiently, especially the adrenal glands. When you eat between 15 to 30 grams of protein in the morning for breakfast, your body realizes that you're not going into starvation and the adrenals do not go into panic mode. I'm going to say that again. Research has shown if you eat 15 to 30 grams of protein in the morning for breakfast, everything levels out in your body. Your insulin levels level out, your adrenal glands level out, your cortisol levels level out. So everything is really good. So some options for breakfast that are great. I love eggs. I eat eggs. You can have avocados, Greek yogurt as long as it's not unsweetened. Or you can do some protein powders. You could do like the Garden of Life protein and greens. It has 20 grams of protein in one scoop. I'm personally on a kick right now of doing the Ancient Nutrition bone broth protein. It has 20 grams of protein in one scoop. And sometimes I eat leftovers from the night before. So there's nothing wrong with not eating breakfast foods for breakfast. That's actually a marketing thing. If you want to look into that, breakfast foods are a marketing thing that marketers came up with to get you to eat certain things at breakfast. The sugary cereals are not something we should have for breakfast. Now for snacks, you want to do things like nuts, avocados, olives. They're especially good because of those essential fats help adrenal fatigue. Some other things you could do are maybe broccoli, cauliflower, and dip it into hummus. And you can see an extended list of these foods to eat in the PowerPoint PDF that's located on holisticangel.com. Now, foods that should be avoided: artificial colors and flavors, fake dairy substitutes, fat substitutes like margarine, food additives, artificial sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup. I have a feeling all of you pretty much know that. I just felt like I needed to say it again. Now, when it comes to supplements, sometimes we do need to supplement our diet because it is difficult to get everything we need, as we discussed earlier, because of the farming methods and stuff. So I believe everyone should be on a good multivitamin. When you choose a multivitamin, look for a vitamin that doesn't have any food colorings. That's one of my big pet peeves. You'll know it because it'll say something like FD&C yellow or FD&C red or anything like that. Food colors are actually made from diesel fuel, asphalt, and tar. Those are things we drive on, not things we should be putting in our body. My preferred multivitamins are vitamins that are whole food. Whole food means that they are, our body absorbs them just like food. They're nothing synthetic in them, so you're not peeing anything out. You're getting everything you're paying for. And there are a lot of vitamins that say they're whole food, but they're not really whole food. Three that you can be guaranteed that are Garden of Life, Mega Food, and New Chapter. And if you ever have any questions about that, if you want to come in our store, give us a call. We can explain to you things to look for on the label. Magnesium is a big one that people need to supplement with. It's one of the top minerals in which we're deficient. As I mentioned earlier, the World Health Organization thinks that America is in a real issue with it. The soil has been depleted because of over farming. Dr. Mark Hyman, who many of you know, thinks that magnesium as the relaxation mineral. Anything that is tight, irritable, crampy, and stiff is a sign of magnesium deficiency, is what he says. So a lot of people like to take magnesium before they go to bed. It helps them relax. It helps with anxiety. Magnesium is different every day for every person. So one day you may need one tablet, the next day you may need 3 tablets. You kind of have to figure that out. A lot of people like the Natural Calm or the Garden Life drinkable magnesiums. For as far as a tablet, Mega Food has a really nice one that is whole food, so your body absorbs every bit of it. I'm one of those people that any way you can get magnesium in your body is a good way to get it in. So I'm not real picky when it comes to that. You need to get your magnesium. Now, B vitamins are water soluble and they need to be replaced every day. B complexes, when they're all the B vitamins together, are actually better over single B vitamins. So like if you were going to take B6 or B2, I would rather you take a complex B vitamin because our body knows what to do with that more, because that's how we get it in our food. And it can decide which vitamins it needs in those. Does it need the B2? Does it need 6? And then it gets rid of what you don't need. So some preferred choices on that are Garden of Life B complex or the Mega Food B complex. Now, as far as actual things to help with anxiety, many of you know that L-theanine is my favorite thing. It's an amino acid that comes from green tea. It is my favorite supplement of all time. It works within 15 minutes to calm anxiety. It's very safe. It can be taken by pregnant women and children and can be taken every day or as needed. Now, there's another product that's just a little bit above it, and it's called Pharma-GABA. And Pharma-GABA is kind of cool because it's manufactured from a probiotic that is in fermented vegetables. Unlike chemically produced GABA, synthetic GABA, Pharma-GABA actually is a more whole food version, and it's more powerful than L-theanine. And people can take it up to 3 times a day. Now, as far as adrenal complexes, to really work on those adrenals and get them where they need to be, you need to be careful when you're looking at labels. If you have high blood pressure, do not take any supplement, whether it's an adrenal or supplement or not. Do not take an adrenal supplement with licorice in it. It's in many adrenal complexes, but it is not safe for people with high blood pressure. So please keep that in mind. If you have high blood pressure, do not take any supplement that has licorice in it. That being said, one of our most popular supplements at the store is the Solaray Adrenal Caps. It does have licorice in it. So again, do not take it if you have high blood pressure. It currently runs about $10, and people tell us that within 3 to 5 days they notice a difference. It's very quick, inexpensive, and really does the job. Now there's some other options out there too. Natural Factors has a new one out called Serene Mind that has got some really great products in it. There's another one called Herbal Adrenagize. And then Gaia Adrenal Health. And there's one at Gaia Adrenal Health. They have a Gaia Nightly Restore. Gaia, the company, if you're not familiar with them, really excellent company. And they are really looking at adrenals from another number of different ways. So if you go to their website, GAIA, and check them out, they have some really neat options when it comes to adrenal supplements. For those of you who are in essential oils, nutmeg is the #1 essential oil for adrenals. It increases your energy and it supports the adrenals. Endoflex is another one I like. It is a blend that helps the endocrine glands. And as I mentioned earlier, the adrenals are part of the endocrine glands. Then NRG, it's spelled ENRGEE. That is a blend that provides energy without overstimulating. So it's another blend I like. Now, if you want to make your own blend, you can get clove, nutmeg, and rosemary, put them together with a carrier oil, and put them on the kidney part of your feet. And that will help support your adrenals as well. So there are a lot of levels of support. And people say, well, what do I start with? I don't want to take so much stuff. Well, Dr. Michael Murray, he's the author of the book Stress, Anxiety, and Insomnia, What the Drug Companies Won't Tell You and Your Doctor Doesn't Know. He offers different levels of support. So on level 1, like that first one that most people don't even really know maybe they're at, he said, eat right, exercise, use stress reduction methods such as meditation, and maybe if you feel like you need it, a good night's sleep, you could take some melatonin. And if maybe you have anxiety during the day, you could take L-theanine. So this is a level 1 kind of support. Just as a side note, a lot of people who have adrenal issues aren't sleeping well. So basically, it's one of those things when your adrenals are low, your sleep is low. When your sleep is low, it makes your adrenals low. So it's this big circle. So that's why he mentions the melatonin to help with sleep. Now, level 2, things are getting a little bit more, issues. Your energy seems to be down every day. You could take either the theanine or the farbagaba, and you could do that on an ongoing basis. Now, level 3 support, he says, not only do the pharmagaba, the L-theanine, the eating right, and all that, but also add in that an adrenal supplement on a daily basis. For level 4, and this is for people who are really starting to see the significant signs of adrenal fatigue, he says you may, on top of all those things we mentioned, put in ashwagandha or Siberian ginseng or rhodiola on top of those. Now, lifestyle. What is going on in your lifestyle besides food that can cause these factors in adrenal fatigue? 2 big ones: lack of sleep, too much stress. So researchers have found that sleep disturbances are directly related to increased sensitivity to arousal-producing stress hormones such as cortisol. What's that mean? You're not sleeping, you're producing more cortisol, makes you fat. We don't want that. Researchers compared patients with insomnia to those who with sleep disturbances and found that insomniacs with the highest degree of sleep disturbances secreted the highest amount of cortisol. So we need to be careful. We need to get our sleep. Sleep in a quiet, dark, and cool room. If you need earplugs and a face mask, do it. Make sure all electronics are turned off and far away from your head. I tell people to get one of those really long cords to plug in your phone, and then put the phone on the ground and just like slide it so it's far away. You don't need it. I would like you to get 7.5 hours of sleep. That's like been determined a perfect amount. But people will be like, well, I go to bed at midnight and I get up at 7. I would rather you sleep 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. That provides more benefits for you than if you went to midnight to 7:30. The reason is our body does a lot of things at night to rejuvenate itself. The liver is rejuvenating, the adrenals are rejuvenating, our digestive system is doing things, and it needs to do that between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. We're just made that way. And so when we mess up that, it messes up everything inside our bodies. So in a study of some young Australian folk, what they discovered was that they took 2 groups and they had them get the same amount of sleep, but at different times. So like that midnight to 7:30 compared to like the 10 p.m. to the 4 a.m., things like that. And what they found was those who went to bed later were twice as likely to become obese and twice as likely to have adrenal issues. So getting that 10 p.m. to at least 4 a.m., preferably later, is going to really help you. People who sleep less than normal, even for a few nights, have a 30% decrease in insulin response. This means they are getting 30% more fat and 30% less energy from the same food as someone who sleeps well. So that magic sleep number, again, as we talked about earlier, is 7.5 hours. Some people actually do well with more. I sometimes like more, but I always try to get at least 7.5 hours. We need a consistent sleep schedule too. That's particularly hard for people who work shift work. But if you're going to bed later than 10, try to get in bed 15 minutes earlier every night for several evenings in a row. And then go to bed 15 minutes earlier than that. So eventually you'll train yourself to be tired by 10 p.m. And don't take naps during the day. Naps will mess up our sleep schedule. Sometimes you have to sleep alone to be able to sleep. If your partner is a snorer or you wake up every time somebody moves in the bed, you may need to sleep alone. Tell your partner if they want you to live a long, happy life, you need to get good quality sleep. And whatever you need to do that is an awesome thing. And nicotine and caffeine that we mentioned earlier increase adrenal stress and can cause blood pressure issues. They are stimulants and they do keep you awake. So don't smoke or don't drink caffeine after 3 p.m. if at all possible. The interesting thing about stress is how you respond to stimuli. So I respond to stimuli differently than you respond to stimuli. So we change our response, we change our stress. So stress can include physical, environmental, dietary, and mental stress. In the PowerPoint PDF that I mentioned earlier that's on the website, there's actually a link that you can go to test your stress levels. Chronic stress can cause an increase in heart disease. Harvard Medical School shows that negative emotions such as anger, depression, worry, or anxiety are linked to an increased risk for heart disease. In older adults, it's been found that depression is associated with a greater than 50% risk of heart failure. When we are stressed, our bodies go into a stress response, which is that flight or fight. And if prolonged, the body will shut down non-essential bodily functions such as the immune system because our body's got to keep, our heart going. It can't worry about keeping us from getting sick. And Anthony Robbins, some of you may know him. He's a best-selling author. He talks about the quality of your life. And he said the quality of our life is equal to the quality of questions that we habitually ask ourselves. And so he says if we want more energy, excitement, and happiness, we need to ask ourselves these questions. There's 5 questions. What am I most happy about in my life right now? What am I most excited about? What am I most grateful about? What am I committed to? And what must I do today to achieve my long-term goals? And he says by keeping those things in top of mind, it can help us really be more energetic, more excited, and more happy about our lives. Some activities that can help our stress level are to put Post-it notes around the house and your work saying breathe. I do that. I have breathe. It's actually right beside my computer right here. It says breathe. Once a day, go outside, take 3 deep breaths, and just, even if I like to exercise before the light is out, but even then I'm getting to hear the animals, I'm breathing in, it really relaxes me. Say no to things you don't want to do and yes to things you do. A lot of you want to please everyone and you can't do that and also take care of yourself. Meal prep on the weekend to make dinner less stressful, or consider using a meal service, Watch a comedy or read a book. Write a gratitude list. Sit quietly for 5 minutes every day and do nothing. So one of the things you can talk about too or think about is what are your priorities? So sit down and write down what are your top 10 time commitments? Things you do for work, social media, clubs and organizations you belong to, church things. Write the first 10 that come to mind. And then in step 2, what you want to do is imagine that someone very close to you has a health scare. Your child, your spouse, your parent, your sibling. You know the person's going to be fine, but they need you by their side for 2 hours a day for the next 2 months. So you're going to look at your list and say, what are the 7 things I could take off this list so I could take care of them? Now, most of us would do that for a loved one, but we wouldn't do that for ourselves. So instead of crossing off 7 obligations, cross off 5 off your original list. If you cut down just on half of your obligation, that would free up 2 hours a week for you to do things like personal care and rest. You aren't good to anyone if you aren't good to yourself. Now we're going to look at some environmental toxins. Many toxins in our environment trigger our bodies to go into survival mode. This is because chemically they activate the storage enzymes of the liver. Key toxins include heavy metals such as lead, mercury, solvents, pesticides, plastics, and many of these chemicals are formally categorized as something called obesogens, meaning that they are known to cause obesity. These chemicals are known to hurt the adrenal glands and change how our genes work, which is kind of crazy and scary. Many of these chemicals build up in our fat tissue, and since they are hard to process, they keep the fat locked in place and are very hard to eliminate. Along with making fat cells more aggressive, common toxic substances have been shown to raise the severity of a response to everyday stressors as well. And it's hard to keep these environmental toxins away from us. They're everywhere. They're called endocrine disruptors as well. They mimic hormones. They overstimulate, they block, or they disrupt the hormones and our natural actions in our body. Um, so, endocrine disruptors can cause inflammation, weight gain, insulin resistance, early puberty, breast cancer, testosterone issues. The list goes on and on. Where are they found? Well, they're found in plastics, food and beverage containers, drinking straws, baby bottles, plastic toys, dental sealants, all kinds of things. They're everywhere. They're also called parabens. They're in almost every cosmetic or product you put on your body. There's also something called triclosan, Triclosan. It's found in antibacterial soap, toothpaste, hand sanitizers, deodorant. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do to keep these things away from us? Well, you can replace sippy cups with stainless steel. Don't make microwave food in plastic containers. Don't eat food or drink anything that's in a plastic container. If you're going to buy canned food, buy it in a BPA free can. Avoid plastic reusable bottles. Stay away from fragrances. Anything that is scented or without that has a synthetic fragrance. This is where essential oils come in. They're phenomenal for that because they're not synthetic. Don't wear your cell phone on your body. Those are called electronic magnetic frequencies that are in cell phones. And if we layer them on our body, those frequencies are coming into our body. So do your research. A great place to check out your personal care products is a site called Environmental Working Group. They go by ewg.org/skin deep. That's where you can get to their skin deep database, which gives you practical solutions to protect yourself and your family from everyday chemicals. They actually have an app. You can go through Target and Walmart, click on the little UPC codes and discover what is in your product. What's really nice about it is they have a green light, a yellow light, and a red light that gives you idea, tells you, oh, red light, I probably should look for something different. So we also need to try to buy organic. That's difficult. It's easier when things are in season. It's easier when you can buy from local farmers. But every year, this same environmental working group puts out a list of dirty dozen. So these are the dozen vegetables and fruits that they recommend that you don't buy unless they're organic. This year, it's things like strawberries and spinach, nectarines, apples, peaches, pears, cherries, grapes, celery, tomatoes, sweet bell peppers, and potatoes. Sometimes buying organic frozen may be the option to go with that way since you can't get them fresh and it's a little bit cheaper frozen. But even if your food isn't organic or if it's not grass fed or if it's frozen, it's still better than a vending machine or a fast food restaurant. So please keep that in mind. So I hope this information was helpful for you. Again, I want to remind you that you can go to the website to get the PowerPoint PDF, the symptoms checklist, the recipes, and by the way, all the resources that were used for this particular video are at the very bottom of the PowerPoint PDF. Thank you so much for joining me.